Hey guys, today's guest is someone who has quietly shaped some of the biggest growth moments in Web3, from launching a 6.3 million public sale that sold out in 19 minutes to driving hundreds of thousands of users and partnership with names like Google Cloud, PancakeSwap. He's been the marketing mind behind the projects across Asia, Israel, and the United States. And the most recently, he's diving into orbital tech. Yes, actual space with SpaceComputer. David is that rare combo of deep operator, storyteller, and someone who has actually been in the arena across cycles.
Very kind words. Happy to be here. So, let's get started.
David, can you tell us a bit about yourself, your journey, what motivated you to get into the space?
What motivated me? Money. I think everybody. So I started out, I finished university. I wanted to travel. I was living in a few different countries. I lived in Russia, then I went to China, doing different sorts of jobs. I picked up some languages, and I spoke Russian pretty well at the time. I learned Russian, and that was right at the time of the 2017 ICO boom. So I was living in Russia then, right at that moment, and some people, actually a guy I was teaching English to, was what I was doing for money at the time. He said, "Hey, I have this marketing agency and we're getting a lot of requests for content and different sorts of marketing campaigns in English. Can you come and help us out?" So it started like very simply just translating materials from Russian into English. First blogs and then white papers. Then it turned into writing blogs and white papers, all types of content marketing. Then eventually creating campaigns, full-fledged campaigns, and then eventually got hired by a team in Hong Kong working on a somewhat interesting project, and the rest is history.
Oh my God. You have worked across Asia, Europe, Eastern Europe, now Israel. How does those geographies shape your style as a growth operator?
Okay, so geography is mostly irrelevant in Web. So I worked for a project in Hong Kong. I was living in Russia at that time. Most of the team at that first project were in Europe and India and Vietnam and all over the place. In my current project, we don't really have too many team members in the same place. I think we've got somebody on every continent, and then like a couple guys here, a couple guys in America, like largely distributed. Like geography doesn't matter that much in terms of the work environment. Now, in terms of the actual growth that you're doing, of course, having this experience helps me to think about how we approach different groups in different places. And you have different expectations of community members in different locations. We can talk about that in a bit. And by the way, I'm always most excited to work with Indians. Uh, like that's the community that like I always look forward to working with. It's a very, I don't want to say hard to penetrate market, but it's very hard to compete there. And I would say it's almost one of the ultimate challenges for non-Indian growth people.
Thank you so much for the kind words. Let's rewind a bit. You have seen ICO and IEO days. How do you see the vibe difference from that time to present?
I think the ICO days, they were far more genuine than today. As in, most of what we saw and most of what we experienced were scams, but nobody thought otherwise. Today, we have a nice professional veneer on many projects, whether that be through some sort of very respected VC backing or perhaps some being located in a country that people consider more legitimate, like the United States or so, which I think is absolutely ridiculous, or by the way they present themselves at conferences or on podcasts and that sort of thing. Right now, it's much harder to tell what's a genuine project and what's not.
Yeah, so you have a lot of experience. I really loved your unfiltered version about going on for money and then sticking around people from different continents, working with them. So, from when you started and where you stand now with SpaceComputer, what's your change of approach towards growth, advising the new projects, or maybe getting into that? What's your change of approach from the getting started to now where you stand?
When I was just getting started, the point was how do we get as much BTC and Ethereum from the wallets of ICO investors into our wallets. That's what growth was defined as back then. Today, nobody can even agree on what growth is. So maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, it was let's get as many Twitter followers and as many Discord members as we can. And that was growth, and you needed these numbers to get listed on an exchange or on a good exchange, because doing so is what defined what your token price and volume would be. Today, it's far less clear what you need to define growth as. We've seen that the model of getting a bunch of honestly fake followers
Yeah.
to get listed does not work. You might have a nice launch, but it won't turn into a project that people care about long term. Today, we need to think in a much more multifaceted way. We can't just look at a couple metrics and say we're growing.
Yeah.
So now the way I'm thinking about it is really a lot more like classic brand marketing. So you're building a community around a brand. Unfortunately, communities cannot be built at the moment around a vision. People are way too burned. So you have to build it around a brand that they trust. So that means really getting that brand out there to every place possible. So this means actually going back to SEO, which is really essential to getting your brand into large language models. We can talk a little bit about that, about the importance now of AI and marketing. And it's also important to think about the behavior of users will be not now, but in 6 months to a year. So I'm talking right now from the perspective of a growth person at a very early stage project that does not have a token yet, and does not have too much of a product yet. So what I have to think about is how will users or community members approach the brand in 2 to 3 years. So the way I'm thinking about it is, okay, how are people learning about projects? How are people interacting with projects today? And I'd love some of you guys' feedback on that. But it seems to me what they're doing is they're going on to different social media, not just Twitter, to get as much information as they can. But I think they're not that interested in talking about the project itself within project channels. I think the idea of a bunch of guys sitting on Discord is close to dead. I don't think people are doing that anymore. I think it's about getting your project out into the ethos as much as possible. How do we measure that? I don't know yet. I think more classic marketing metrics are going to be introduced in the crypto marketing and growth sphere in the next few years. But unfortunately, the tools don't really exist yet, despite everything that the Kaito guys and the whole InfoFi world has been doing.
And where do you see TVL as the metric for growth?
TVL, well, it depends what you're working on, right? So previously I worked on a major indexing project. It was really deep infrastructure. So there is a place for measuring how much value was being locked in the protocol, whether through staking or delegating. There was a value to that. However, the way things are set up right now, token value is very rarely reflective of that. So I would say that the TVL there, if we want to call it that, was a good indicator of growth, but it didn't mean that it would result in token price or volume increases that you expected. People still very rarely purchase and trade tokens for that utility in the protocol. Now, we do see positive breakthroughs for this in like the DeFi world. I know, for example, like in Aave, right? I need to look at the metrics a bit, but the token is much more like how much of that token is being staked does represent usage of the protocol, and it is a good indicator of maybe long term what can happen with that token. But honestly, things are still very early, so it's hard to tell. Now, if you're talking about TVL in terms of just volume in general locked in a protocol, or value in general locked in a protocol. So if you're looking at, let's say, a Bitcoin L2, is it worth looking at like how much Bitcoin is locked there? Maybe, maybe not. It goes back to what I was saying in the beginning. A lot of times, like these protocols aren't what you think they are. You see on Twitter, they have 30,000 followers. Maybe they've been around for like a year. And then they say we have hundreds of millions of dollars locked. Where did that money come from? It's not from those 30,000 followers, right? So I guess in the end, I'd just say tread carefully.
Interesting. We see with some of the protocol having 100 million of TVL with 30K or 40K followers over Twitter. So do you think those protocols take their assets or VC funds or funds provided by the user, then restake it to inflate that number? Like how frequent does that happen and how they do it?
If you can think of the scheme, people do it for sure. And there's not the same attention to transparency that I think there was even a few years ago. You don't see that many on-chain sleuths around on Twitter as you used to. People don't spend time doing it. I don't know why. We just have Zach, and that's the big name. People don't feel like building their reputation on that, I suppose. Now, it might not be even real numbers. I've seen projects claim high TVL and they're just taking numbers from somewhere else. They skip putting the asterisk next to the number, but it's some sort of projection, or it's some sort of, I've seen projects built on eigenlayer say, oh, we're secured by this $1 billion amount, and that's money that people have trusted into the eigenlayer protocol, right? It's just like saying you're building on Ethereum and saying it's secured by whatever's staked into Ethereum right now. People just do whatever they want in marketing, honestly.
Makes sense. So, just coming back to the branding part, you talked about people buy a lot more on branding. So, for example, there is a protocol and they have bad reputation or maybe not that community support. So, how rebranding helps them in scaling and what factors matter the most when they try to do that? And in the branding section, it was about a product or maybe a founder's branding, founder-led marketing or something like that. That matters the most in the rebranding part.
Okay, so there's 2 or even 3 questions there, right? So first question, like, how does a project go about rebranding if they've got a bad reputation and can it work? Second, like, how would I go about effective branding of an early project or product? And third, do I mean like focus more on the product or the founder or on the project as a whole? So let's start with the rebranding. I think it's very, very difficult to undergo a rebranding. So I would not recommend doing it just to get out of a bad reputation. Let's remember that the memory span of the average crypto Twitter individual is very short. And that's basically the only place where your reputation is bad. So, and increasingly, how much crypto Twitter is relevant. So how much crypto Twitter is relevant to the success of a protocol is decreasing. And that's the only place anybody cares. So if you're gonna rebrand to get out of some bad reputation, whether it be by your own fault or maybe associating with a protocol that didn't turn out well or something like that, it's probably just not worth it. It's when you rebrand, meaning change the name and change the whole entire corporate identity, you're going to have to rebuild trust from zero. And if you have some usage in your old brand that has the bad reputation, that means there was some trust there. Now you're going to nothing. Second, if you haven't reached PMF, is the question here, oh, we want to get away from a bad reputation, or we were never able to get PMF with the old brand, so let's try again. I think that might be what they're actually attempting. And sorry, no, like just having a new name and a new color, it's not going to work. I mean, enjoy the next couple of years of using up the rest of your VC money, but that's where you are. Okay, so now let's talk about like the early stage project that's still establishing its brand for the first time. I think we are moving away from a focus on the main project, like the company. Like in this space, we like to call a company a project. We're moving away from focus on the company, and we now are focusing more on products. So if a project creates a chain, people now think of the chain as the product and the project as the guys who made that. I think this whole shift was led by all of the by a lot of the large L2s in the space, a lot of these foundations who they shifted from just focusing on their flagship chain to the software development kits for building chains. So that started with Optimism, the super chain, right? Now people really think about super chain before Optimism, I think. From Polygon to the CDK, the chain development kit, from Arbitrum to Orbits. And we're seeing the same, I think, on the application level. And I think builders also, they recognize that they should separate the reputation of their company from the application, because that application might not work. It might not get PMF. That's fine, right? It's normal in the early stage world. So they're keeping their company a little bit separate so they can try something else, right? So if you're at an early stage, that's the first thing I consider. I consider, and I think it's a good idea, creating two brands, creating one brand for the product. That way, if the product doesn't work, and there's a very good chance it doesn't, you can say, okay, it didn't work. We're going to try something else, right? Okay, so now to the third part about founder-led marketing, the founder brand, the cult of personality. I think there's a lot of value to creating a cult of personality. I do think that can really work, especially if you have a founder who is genuinely somebody that people could idolize and feel that they want to build a community around. However, I don't think that is the path for everyone. Indeed, I think it's the path for a very, very small minority. So what I would say here is, like, if you're not that, and I'm thinking most of the listeners are not that, seriously, don't worry about it. You don't really even have to have a Twitter following. You just need to work hard and build a product that people want to use. If you don't have a Twitter following and you don't have a product, work on the product. You don't need to spend so much time on Twitter if it's not your calling.
Interesting take. So again, coming back to Twitter followers, I have seen you scaling the account of SubSquid from 0 to 260K. And on top of that, I have another question that, having worked myself in indexing and querying space, so I see there are very few solutions in the market yet to decentralize. So how did you plan to scale such solutions to the developers or reaching the right set of users? How did you let that from point A to point B?
Okay, so two separate questions, but they are somewhat related. So you see there, we got up to like 250,000 Twitter followers for a decentralized indexing product. Does that mean there's 250,000 people who are excited about the mission of decentralizing indexing? Unfortunately, I have to say no. There's not 250,000 people in the world who care one bit about that. I would say saying that there's 2,000 people in the world who care one bit about that is a bit of a stretch. And I've met most of those people personally. So the Twitter followers, and if you're running a brand account and you want to get followers there, just remember they'll come when there's a chance for them to make money from coming. It's really just as simple as that. So if you're decentralizing in the sense you're going to launch a token, and there's some opportunity for people to earn from that token, they're going to be searching for every way possible to get alpha on that token. So they're going to follow you. So don't worry, they're coming if you're giving them the opportunity. Now, how do you get people who are genuinely interested in your deep tech project, whether that be indexing, whether that be something to do with any sort of infrastructure? You might be working on an Oracle, you might be working on decentralized compute, you might be working on something in the security world. How are you going to get people interested about that? Well, you have to go to them, unfortunately. You have to go directly to them and force feed it to them. So that involves first identifying who those people are, and second, identifying how to get to them, and third, figuring out how to incentivize them. So if you're building a decentralized protocol, you have a very powerful tool that you can use, and that is an incentivized testnet. So you should design your incentivized testnet to be very accessible for those particular people in particular, while being inaccessible for people who are not those people, and then make sure that those people that you want in your decentralized protocol are truly incentivized to stay. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges in the space. I think the graph, I think you were involved with the graph. I think they did a great job with that, to be honest. They were very early. I think like running a graph node was not that difficult. I think it could have been tailored more to people who would have been more useful to the protocol. And you don't need like that many people joining the protocol. So what happened is a lot of people got GRT tokens and then just dumped them. We had a similar experience. We made, I believe, it far too easy to participate in the testnet running squids, which are the indexers in that protocol. And then what happens? The people get their tokens and then they dump them, right? The lesson here really, I think, for people is when you're going into your incentivized testnet, be confident, be really confident. You don't have to make things easy and super accessible. People will come. People are out there looking for these opportunities. You just have to get to those people and give them the opportunity, and they'll become a part of your protocol and hopefully long-term members and long-term contributors.
Yeah, so that's a great take. So you talked about a user retention part, right?
Mhm.
Little bit. So doubling on user retention, what are the activities or maybe the general activities that you have figured out till now that maybe worked for you, maybe some tasks or maybe weekly tasks or something like that, that make the user sticks a lot more than the you have learned something that previously it was
Mhm.
not working, now it works well, and I will try to amplify that more. So what's that things that you wanna tell us?
So when I design an incentivized testnet again, I will not do the following. So these things worked. They brought people in, but they didn't lead to long-term retention. So I will not do the following. I will not require people to come every day, log in, and press a button. I will not require people to pay attention to every tweet and like and retweet it. I will not require people to attend our Twitter spaces or other online events. I will not ask people to put an emoji or the name of the project into their username. These things are all just like either nefarious for the brand or completely useless, and they'll lead to people grifting on your protocol. And it's not just bad because they're going to get the token and they're going to dump it. It's bad because it pushes away people who you actually want in your protocol to join. What I would do instead is create truly interesting and engaging experiences for people that you actually want to join the protocol. So if we're talking about some sort of protocol where we need people to run infrastructure, I would ask them to come in and do different sorts of technical updates on a regular basis. I'd work with the protocol team, with the engineers, to ensure that perhaps our updates are spaced out in a certain way. That way, we need to make sure that the people aren't just running the node and leaving it, but they're coming back and engaging with these updates, understanding these updates, really reading the notes, the update notes, the change logs, and understanding what we're doing. Because what you want to do is get the community into the habit of paying attention to changes in the protocol and feeling like they're a part of it. Because when you ultimately decentralize, those are the guys who are going to be involved in protocol updates. They're going to be voting on these things. They're going to be having discussions about them. Yeah, you want to get that started as early as possible. You want to incentivize it, and then you have the people retained.
Understood.
Thanks for answering.
So, David, I would like to go back again to that your token sale you have done with the SubSquid.
Mm.
So,
Mhm.
how did you plan the campaign towards the execution? What were the categories you divided beforehand? With category, I meant your marketing, Twitter, LinkedIn, or social media, or incentivizing user on chain. Another question on top of it. So, what made you choose CoinList to select that as a ICO launchpad?
Okay, so token sales are one of the easiest things you can do in crypto. They're incredibly easy because you're actually selling something, and the thing that you're selling is the dream that everybody is here for. It's quick money. So you just have to get into the mentality, and I'm sorry, the people who participate in token sales, they're interested in quick money without exception. Not a single person is joining a token sale thinking, okay, I'm going to hold this token for 2 years, for 3 years, for 10 years. Not a single person. They're thinking, I'm getting in before everybody else so that I can dump it on those people. That's the mentality. That's exactly the mentality. Marketing to those people is extremely easy because in terms of story, all you have to do is tell them whatever makes them think that the price will be higher at launch than when they're purchasing it. So whatever you can say to convince them of that, say it. If this is your goal, if your goal is to have a successful sale, this is what you're doing. Uh, and then you just have to make sure you have distribution to those people. So it's narrative and then it's distribution. So why did we choose CoinList? Because it was the best distribution at that moment. Uh, like when you're going with CoinList, you're getting a very professional team. Those guys really know what they're doing, and you're getting an email list, and their email list goes out to millions of people who spend their days just waiting for an opportunity. Now, what did we do to be especially successful? So we sold out in 19 minutes. That's their fastest sale ever. And the way we achieved that was we didn't just depend on their email list, on their user base. We did that by creating our own email list. So over the course of our testnet, over the course of all these different community campaigns we did previously, we collected users' email addresses and we collected users' wallet addresses. And when you have these two things, you're a very, very powerful marketer because with a wallet address, you can look up what these people have done. You can see, oh, this person, they've participated in 3 or 4 sales on CoinList or on other platforms. We can see how much ETH they have on different chains. We can see what DeFi protocols they're using. We can see if they're holding mostly blue chips or if they're holding lots of different ICO coins or recent sale coins, or if they prefer just to have their money in stables. You can see all this stuff on chain, and what we did was we just created this list. We had tens of thousands of people there, and when we saw that and when we did analysis of these wallet addresses and saw that they had indicators from their on-chain activity that showed that they're likely to participate in the sale, we were ready to push. So really what this showed, gotta say, email marketing is still king. So we let these people know ahead of time, okay, our sale is coming on CoinList. We told CoinList, okay, we're ready to go. And then when it was time for the sale, we gave priority queue to the people on our email list. We were able to see the progress bar as the sale was going. People from our priority queue, 76% of them converted to token purchasers, and they purchased a significant percent of the cap that we had set. And that was already done in 7 minutes. And then the rest of the 19 minutes, that was just the CoinList email list. So yeah, so that's the story. That's the success. I guess it's been long enough now that I can tell you that story.
Sorry, one more question from my side. I'm really curious on this topic. So, David, there must be some user or the community member who remain with your ecosystem after purchasing the token. There may be some or at least a few percentage of people who remained with the protocol or remain with the token or started using the protocol. What were their behavior if you were able to track?
I'm doubtful. Remember, like you can go and look at the chart. The price went down bad for a long time and the market was in a very difficult spot. Why would anybody in their right mind stick around? I don't blame anybody, right? Why would you stick around?
That was brutal.
No, seriously.
Yeah, makes sense.
Both people listening, you have to be realistic. And also be realistic to the rest of when you're speaking with the rest of your team. Don't overpromise because there's no promises you can make when market conditions are terrible. This is an entire industry built on optimism, and when there's no optimism, what product is there for these people?
True.
So like, unless you want to really burn yourself out, just keep in mind, like that's not how you're building your core community, and moving forward, that's not how I'm going to be building my core community. In the project I'm working on right now, and any project I work on in the future. That's just not how you do it.
Yeah.
And again, so I'm sorry, just being totally honest, token sales don't build communities. Like, I'm sorry. I myself, as an occasional investor in early stage projects, know that the time to purchase is either long before, as a real insider, befriending the team and getting into a pre-seed round or an angel round or something along those lines. Or you wait for their launch, wait for the token to go down, and then you buy. That's what you do.
Yeah.
Loved your take on that. So basically, about when you analyze this data, initially you talked about the importance of AI that you have used in your work. So where from you decided there's tens of thousands of data.
Mhm.
So what does think that you specified in a most efficient way to actually, because your ICOs will be launching soon, you need to coordinate with CoinList and a lot of work and pending. So what's the most efficient way to actually track down these, make a list and give a priority queue as well? So actually managing all this, and what importance does AI plays in this?
So regardless of what distribution you're using, right? So it might be CoinList, it might be another launchpad. You don't need to use like a tier one launchpad, by the way. It depends on what your goals are, right? Maybe you're on a much smaller scale, and honestly, that's great. Like whatever platform you're using, and this is the closest thing to real marketing we have in this industry. So look at so to figure out what sorts of analytics you should be doing, start by looking at who you're selling the token to and what would be an indicator of who they are. Yeah, you're right. With AI, this becomes very, very easy. What step one, look at the audience, see what describes those people, write down a list of what those. So step two is then write down a list of what those data points would be. Step three, gather the wallets. So through different sorts of campaigns. So you have to incentivize people to provide their information. Obviously, if you're doing an incentivized testnet, that's a great opportunity. You can work with whatever your distribution partner is on these sorts of campaigns as well. You can work with your partners on different sorts of campaigns. And this takes time. Like, don't expect to build this list in 4 weeks. It's going to take a few months. And then next step, take your data points, go to the guy on your engineering team who is either the least busy or the most likely to overwork himself and say, hey, I am not very good at querying RPCs myself. Although you could ask AI to help you, but it's easier to ask the guy to do it. And then he'll go and he'll query all the wallets and he'll come to you with all the data. And then now, I guess, thanks to AI, you can just feed that data into the LLM and get your answers.
Yeah.
True, man.
Crypto users out there know that teams are using your data in all types of ways. No matter, like, I think even like the most privacy loving project, or like the project that says, oh, we're here to protect your privacy and our tech is going to offer a new way of doing this. They're feeding all your data into some LLM right now, if you're providing your data to them.
Makes sense.
There's no such thing as free lunch, and all your data will be monetized if there's an opportunity to do it.
Yeah,
That's
unrealistic expectations in this industry is high. They
Sorry?
set unrealistic expectations. Your previous point about that.
Yeah.
So there was a recent Twitter, a lot of noise about the marketers, right?
Mhm.
They're hiring CMOs, everyone.
Right.
So 400K, 1 million package. So it
I'm
was
not
like a
making 400K, if that's where the question's going.
no. So the unrealistic expectations. So what are the realistic expectation when from a marketer? Basically, when they come into your team, people have unrealistic expectations. They will have their strong social media. They will also provide the community support. They will actually grow their product. The branding will be better. So how much pressure, maybe the expectation you set, and then how you achieve that?
Mhm. So what are the expectations like on the marketer when he's running a team?
Yeah.
So it depends at what stage you're joining the project. For me, the most interesting time to join a project, to become a member of a team, is pretty early, often first non-technical hire. And it really depends who you're working with again. If it's all technical people there and you, they're going to expect you to do everything that's non-technical, and maybe not like the ops and the administrative stuff, maybe not accounting and all that, but anything that involves outward communications, they're going to expect you to do that. Now, keep in mind that they don't know what they need. They are builders who were put in that spot by potentially by their investors, or maybe by a very creative and very forward-thinking CEO who brought it all together, and they simply don't know. So if you're joining a team like that, it's worth being actually quite patient with them regarding their expectations, because they're looking to you for expertise. They're looking to you as this as the person who helps build this all from zero. Now, if you're not ready for that, maybe don't get this job. Don't, like, I know it's not the easiest thing to find a job, but if you're not ready to take over everything and explain how to build out everything, maybe the job's not for you. If you got this job and you're upset that you're doing everything, maybe it's because they saw you as the guy who's going to build out the team in the future when the resources allow for it. But if you can't do that, and if you're really, you just don't have those skills, go get a job at a more mature project where you're going to have specific tasks. I don't believe at the more mature projects, and I've seen that from the inside a bit, that you have the guy doing BDSM, as they call it, right? Business development, social media, marketing, right? They don't function that way. And when you get to the big, more, like, I don't know, what do we want to call them? Crypto companies. Like, you're going to have a specific role there, whether that's like running the Twitter or creating content or interfacing with the developer relations team or managing events. You're going to have a specific role there. If you're just getting started, consider looking for more like that job, learn something well, and then move your way up in marketing and become more and more independent that way. I started out basically that way. I started out as a content marketer. Most of the work that I did in the very beginning can now be done in a few prompts with an LLM, right? But you have to start small.
Yeah.
David, I wanted to understand why the space is not talking much about data analyst with marketers. Why these two roles have been kept differently? Like, I really felt that no one is talking about real jobs, doing real stuff, just creating noise
Mhm.
and, and just shitting on Twitter. What do you think about that? Why it's like that?
Like, my working theory right now is that it's the marketer's fault. Talking to a lot of projects that are trying to hire growth people and marketing people, it's really, really tough. They're not finding candidates who are ready to work with data or are patient enough to work with data. I think there's a contingent of people who honestly think crypto marketing is sitting on Twitter and, I don't know, making memes. I'm sorry, like, if you want to be a professional in this industry, you can be. You just have to be one and offer those skills to the teams that you're working with. Those people, they don't want to do marketing and growth. They want to think about solving tough engineering problems. They want people who will think about the growth for them. And if you're ready to do that, there's a ton of opportunities. And honestly, I think this is where that 400K CMO meta came from. I think there's projects that are quite desperate for actual expertise. And so there are projects, like some larger ones with bigger backing, that are going out there and talking to recruiters and saying, okay, we're ready to spend $400,000, give quite a bit of equity or tokens to somebody who has this real expertise. Maybe they're not really working in Web3 right now. Maybe they have an executive position elsewhere in tech. And yeah, we're ready to work with them. Maybe it's not going to work out, but they want to try it. If they go to the typical crypto tech recruiter and say, we want to hire a growth guy, they're going to be going through tons of interviews with people with none of that expertise, none of it, and inflated expectations.
So true. Yeah. So this is going to hurt a lot of people, to be honest, when they will listen this.
Bro, like I was thinking from the very start, it's not practical the way we are working.
Yeah.
It's not at all practical.
Yeah. It will be better. So you are very active on Twitter. I see that you are engaging with on comments and everyone. David, example. So for you, you are watching Twitter Space on crypto on Twitter very closely. So what exciting for you right now in the space? L2s, consumer crypto, ZK, or maybe you want to look up to see that yes, this can be a little bit better than what exists right now. And I will put my efforts to learn more about it and understand it much better.
What truly excites me is what excited me already 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago when I was first getting into crypto. It's being able to transact and store value without needing to deal with banks or other bureaucracies.
Yes.
So I am most excited still with technologies that enable that in new and more user-friendly ways. Right now, I know it probably sounds boring, especially coming from somebody who works on like a project that's literally putting a blockchain in space. Right now, I'm playing with all the different crypto cards. I really like that I can hold my assets in stable coins and then transact however I want using any of these cards. Right now, most of my net worth is in stable coins. I think we're going to be, well, I'm older than you guys, but you're still my generation, basically. I'm not that much older than you guys. We're going to be the first generation that has the opportunity at least to retire with crypto-based um financial funds, right? Like, so I'm most excited about ways that we can safely and without intermediaries earn a yield on our money long term. I'm very excited that I've never had a 401k and never will. I'm very excited that I'm not paying money into a pension fund and never will. I'm very excited that I'm going to be able to set up my own fund that I control entirely and then retire when I'm ready on my own terms.
Yeah, like I can already started feeling it. Crypto gives
Yeah.
you raining money. Not money exactly, but gives you raining
Freedom.
opportunities which you can grab and change your life.
It gives
That's the
everyone equal opportunities. You have actual controls on your own that you earn, that you put your time in. You have like there is no caste system or maybe anything from your geographics, where you live, where you were born, you were raised, doesn't matter. What you work, it's yours, and you control that. There is no one telling you you should do that, do this and that. Love it. Like that's the part of crypto that everyone should appreciate, and it will mature with regulations and everything that is coming right now.
So, like we talked about in the beginning, like I just mentioned it, like I really like working with Indians, and I really like you guys' approach, or generally when I meet uh, Indians who work in this space, they have the mindset of I come from this ultra competitive economy. I'm figuring out how to become successful on my own terms. And I absolutely love that. So we see some of the best innovation from Indians in this space because these are the ones who are most focused on real independence. Yeah, I think it's no question that you guys are so successful. I mean Indians in crypto, right? But you guys too. And I think it's probably one of the more important markets that projects need to work with, even though it's incredibly difficult for outsiders.
on behalf of the whole Indian Web3 community, I say thank you. So, David, moving forward, we haven't talked much about your present role and present company. So,
hmm
can you please dive deep into what SpaceComputer is? And, like, if I can see, there is one tagline, orbital root of trust. What's that?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so we're going back to a very basic question that was brought up with the introduction of cryptocurrencies. Where is trust rooted? So we had the introduction of Bitcoin, and we had the introduction of digital trust. This was trust that was rooted in nodes that are being run by a distributed computer across the whole planet. Ethereum expanded on that by putting additional functionality on nodes, and we got the world computer. Now, nodes are not impenetrable, and having an Earth-based system is not the ultimate in security, especially when you're depending on only a few nodes for a particular purpose. So what SpaceComputer does is it puts the nodes in space, cryptographically secure. So these are TEEs that live on satellites. And what it enables is really high trust computation. So
I love the philosophy.
yeah. So I would just bring it back to like we were talking about what I'm excited about in crypto right now, which is more on the financial side. So one of the major challenges is our private keys, right? I spend a lot of time thinking about my private keys, to be honest, right? How I'm storing them, what sort of ways I'm doing to make sure that if something happens to me, my family members can get access, all these different things. SpaceComputer or products built on SpaceComputer may provide another level of trust for that. So this could be on the personal level. So perhaps a shard of your private key will be up there, always accessible by the right people, right? But then we're talking about, and maybe you saw that recent Balaji's tweet about soon we're going to have crypto access to all types of different devices, whether that be a car door or a drone. Well, we're going to be having that on the state level, right? And think about how states are going to be storing private keys that give access to a drone army of drones, right? Now, if you're the United States or India, that's not a huge issue, right? You have ways of storing secrets that are relatively effective, right? We don't really know where the aliens are, for example. But if you're a small country, you're going to want access to a service that is verifiably permissionless and verifiably not impenetrable to other parties. So just like El Salvador started by establishing Bitcoin as an official currency quite a few years ago now, but we expect that the infrastructure we're setting up will be used by small nation states for their ultimate security. Of course, it's not just traditional nation states. We believe in the network state thesis of Balaji. We believe that there's going to be AI agents that are going to have secrets, and it'll make a lot of sense to them to put
Yes.
those secrets in the safest place possible.
David, there is one bomber in the United States Air Force. Its name is B2, which was recently used over Iran. So very famous now. So they use a technology of communication with cryptology, which can communicate anywhere at any point over the globe. So is the psychology similar, but for the people you are providing that level of trust from the space?
Exactly. So I was brought up just the very basic, like cryptographic seed phrase. But this is another example of cryptography that everybody should ultimately have access to. So SpaceComputer is going to be the best way for like a smaller nation state or a network state or AI or you or me to access this level of cryptography.
Very fascinating.
No, that's brilliant. I'm really happy you brought that up. Yeah. And yeah, major fan of B2 bombers in that campaign.
Yeah.
And another reason why I like working with Indians. You guys are on the right side of history as well. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
So you have started from content as well. So now you have a ton of experience. So if you have to summarize a way for someone who is very beginner who is interested in content and marketing side and wants to break it into this industry. So what will suggest with him, what he should do and how he can scale in his career as well?
Great question. The biggest mistake I see new marketers and new people who are interested in getting in through doing content marketing do, their biggest mistake is that they work for free. So, and this I think goes contrary to a lot of advice you see out there. A lot of people say, go establish your brand, spend a bunch of time and your own money, like creating a sleek website and a blog and all that. No, I'm sorry, no. So this is a lesson I learned actually long before I got into marketing. When I was a teenager and like my early 20s, I worked as a musician and I got this piece of advice: never play a gig for free. Somebody might tell you, oh, like it's going to be great exposure for you or for your band, right? No, don't do it. What you're doing is you're devaluing the product that you're selling. My advice, go find a project and start working for them. Even charge a low fee. Just start working for money as soon as possible. This is not just good because you'll get some money. It's good because you'll learn how to interact with a team and interact with an audience, which they have, even if it's a small audience, because that's the real job of a marketer and a content marketer in particular, understanding a product, understanding how to position that product, working with the team to determine what the messaging should be based off of their views, and then adjusting it based off of what the community has seen. Do not work in a vacuum. Do not start writing something that seems interesting to you, because likely it's not interesting to anybody else.
So, David, how can we get involved with SpaceComputer to contribute meaningfully? At the same time, to make some bucks, it could be either building on top of it or
Yeah.
doing promotion, contribution, plus earning money. How we could approach with the project?
So there will be incentivized devnets and testnets in the future. So look forward to that. Right now, the thing to do is to follow on Twitter. That's at SpaceComputer. That's one word. At SpaceComputer.io. Just one word, at SpaceComputer.io. That's the Twitter handle. From the Twitter, you can click on the link to join the Telegram. And if you do that, you'll get all the updates. You can put us on mute for now and just wait a few months. Things are coming. I think I think it's pretty clear from like the philosophy that I spoke about throughout. I'm not that interested in wasting your time. Right now, we're still early. Right now, we're still building out the very basic technologies on which the products will be built. But if you want to get involved and you're interested in it, now's the time to just start paying attention until it's really time to start paying attention. If you've got something to contribute, I, at least in my role, will do my best to make sure that you're as rewarded as possible.
Go everyone, check out spacecomputer.io. Yeah.
Thank you so much, David, for coming and giving your time. Honestly, really appreciate that. And what I find genuinely inspiring from you, you really listens very well, articulates your thought, and give a unfiltered opinion or unfiltered knowledge on top of it. That's what I personally got inspired from.
Well, it was a very interesting chat, really great questions. Appreciate the very kind words. And like I think that's like honestly the kindest words you could say. That's what I'm trying for. And that's what brought me into crypto, I think, ultimately. So I first landed in crypto almost at random. I just needed a job and got one. But what kept me here, or what kept me wanting to work here, was that I I, I can I can say these things the way I want to say them. I can be as unfiltered as I want, and I can find opportunities. And I'd like to say to people who are listening, who like they might be on Twitter and they're not getting much engagement, or they might be going through a lot of job interviews and they're not yet finding the right fit. What I'd like to say to them is that if there's any place where you can find the right fit, it's in crypto. You just have to be patient, and that social media engagement, it really doesn't matter. There's in-groups, and you might not be part of that in-group, but when you're in the right project and working on the right technology and providing value to a community, you'll get that acceptance. You just have to keep working hard and you'll get there.
Thanks, David. Let's wrap it up pretty long. Thank you.
Thank you.